What's going on, everybody? This is the blockchain backer bringing you the latest cryptocurrency news and analysis. Today, we'll be talking about the XRP price chart along with the Bitcoin price chart as we're seeing a lot of volatility as we get ready to kick off a new week. In today's video, we'll be discussing the things that are triggering a lot of this volatility that's happening in the market, as this is not isolated to crypto. This is actually taking place over there in the US stock market, as well as Nvidia is tanking in pre-market off the launch of DeepSeek, which is like a competitor to OpenAI, but it runs at only 4% of the operating cost of OpenAI. So it's 96% cheaper, has the market in a little bit of a frenzy as we get ready to kick off the week. You've got the NASDAQ down over 900 points before the market even opens. You get the Dow down about 400 points and the S&P down about 150. So you're down a little bit over 4% over there on the NASDAQ. Bitcoin's down about 3.5% or $3,500, and XRP down about 7%, back at about 279 right now. So we'll talk about these levels that we've gotten back to over here on XRP. I'm going to tie in the bigger picture of what I see going on over here with Bitcoin and reiterate these things that we've been talking about in here for the safety trade dominance and how we're really kind of right on the cusp here as we get into February. And of course, we'll touch base here on the XRP price chart. But I think the most important thing here is to try to paint a picture on Bitcoin and the relationship for there to be some type of move like this come in the market here in the coming weeks. I've characterized this range happening for Bitcoin as just an extremely complicated range. I think that's kind of the term I've been using for, 3 or 4 weeks at this point. But I see something interesting that has happened in here right now that does have confluence to looking for a moment like this to occur based on what we actually did end up seeing back there in 2021 with a range very similar like this to Bitcoin right back over here. So we'll tie in that picture of Bitcoin, we'll tie in that picture of the safety trade dominance, we'll tie in the picture of XRP, and just kind of remembering that a lot of these things point to that, in the next maybe month or two could be pretty exciting, but to not forget the bigger picture of what we're kind of looking at it through, at least through the lens on this channel of this being a rotational top in the equity market. And well, did we just see an event happen for tech? Now, it's not unusual that we're going to see some volatility on a week like this. This is Fed week. This is where the Fed has anticipated that it will be pausing its interest rate cutting cycle. There's a 97% probability that the Fed is going to pause. We tend to see volatility on weeks like this. However, this is kind of a little bit of a catalyst happening at the beginning of the week. So I'm curious of how much actual volatility is going to be tied to the Fed. I tend to think markets kind of like calm themselves down. Participants get themselves all positioned and prepared for the Fed meeting, but we're kind of starting it off with a lot of volatility. So I'm not really sure how impactful like the Fed stuff is going to be this week, but we will live stream it, and that will be on Wednesday. Now, as for the news of what's happening here as we start off the week, there's DeepSeek that was launched. You can go check your app store on your phone. You will see that #1 free app being downloaded right now is DeepSeek, which is like a competitor to OpenAI or ChatGPT, and the cost or operating cost is only 4% that of ChatGPT or OpenAI, and produces high quality results. So the market's in a frenzy of, is Nvidia overvalued? Are we going to need all this stuff? And that's kind of what we're seeing as we're getting ready to kick off the beginning of this week. But what's going on over here on the Bitcoin price chart? So I'm going to try to make the most sense out of this range that I can, at least of where we're at right now, like looking for something familiar. The question has been whether or not this is distribution that's happening over here for Bitcoin. This is what distribution looked like for Bitcoin back in 2021. So trying to see, is there anything similar or familiar that's happening over here right now that mimics that of what was going on at that time? We know that the measured move for Bitcoin would have gotten you to like 107, 108,000. We've gotten there. We're really struggling there at that level. But if we just kind of look at what distributions can look like in here, we see some things that are familiar, where it's just trying to kind of work its way up and then pulls back, right? Work its way up and pull back. Kind of sloppy stuff down in here, and then pushes on to just kind of get a new high and then pulls back, right? We actually do get it. It's really hard to see on here, but here, I'll do this. We do actually get a little new high right there for Bitcoin. I'll take that stuff off over there. We get a new high here for Bitcoin, and then we start pulling back. Now, what's interesting about right here is I'll put this on a smaller time frame to see it a little clearer, is whether or not that's already kind of getting near the end of a completed ABC. And that is what we actually ended up seeing up in here for the distribution phase of Bitcoin back in 2021, is that there was an ABC correction that came out of there. Now, of course, what this doesn't tell you is, are you still just right here? There's still some more slop and some more capitulating that's going to end up happening in here before something like that can happen, maybe. But if that's what this range is, well, there's a little bit of confluence on something else that we've been talking about for it to be in that phase right now. And that's what we've been talking about with the safety trade dominance. If I come back over here and we'll take a look at that, right? If this is a distribution range, if we're, getting close to being halfway through this distribution for Bitcoin, and if there's still more working out in here and then this and that, and if we're just somewhere along there, right? Well, it would have confluence to this, which is the safety trade dominance. It's breaking down in here from back in 2021, and this is where things got really crazy. But I can overlay that Bitcoin dominance right here on this chart to show where it was at in that phase. If you were just right there at that completion right in here by overlaying Bitcoin dominance. We got to put us on the daily on here. But what you see in here is that this is that moment, right? This is actually where the breakdown happens from. So we're over here talking about this and looking at it through the lens of us being right in here in this market. Well, in that distribution range for Bitcoin back in 2021, that's where it was. It does this ABC in here. And then once that happens, that's where the Bitcoin dominance tumbles on itself after the completion of that correction right in there, right? Major participants probably realize, hey, we are in distribution. This thing is not acting like a range in here. The market just kind of floods the cash throughout the rest of the market, and we have crazy excitement until we get to a 702 retracement over here, and then that marks the end of the cycle, right? But this is definitely something we've been talking about in essentially every single video that we've done, and that it's moved kind of right on time of where we are right now, and that if things were going to get moving and if things were going to get exciting in this market, that it would probably end up being probably sometime around this weekend or heading into next week as we get February kicked off. Well, if you're going to, draw that contrast to that and say, okay, well, if we're using kind of a model from back in 2021, well, what was happening in the broader context of the market during that moment? Well, this is what was happening, right? And this is where it ends up breaking down, and this is where that dominance falls, and the altcoin market goes pretty crazy in here. But we were in a distribution range, right? And what phase of the distribution range were we at? Or after we kind of completed this ABC correction that ends up happening in here. So the question is that also where we are, right? Are we in a distribution range? Are we finishing off an ABC correction happening in here? And then it starts off, right? So the market actually looks like it should look, or at least Bitcoin does look like it should look, if we were going to be looking for that to happen and having confluence to that moment. Because I think the arguments have all been there that we've been moving really on the trajectory of what you would think, and that this market is much further along in the cycle than people probably anticipate that it is. 4-year cycles, we've got until November, October, December, whatever. But that we're really kind of pointing towards maybe like the end of February or middle part of March. And it's one thing to just kind of look at this and say, hey, that's how our timing is looking at. But if you're looking for a contextual comparison to say, well, what was happening in the market right here for that event to end up happening, it's that Bitcoin was in distribution, and that when this phase ends up happening in here, that's where Bitcoin is. It pushes for a new high, ABC corrects. Then as Bitcoin goes for its final push up in here, we are in the breakdown of the dominance. We're in, quote, alt season as the distribution finishes off in here. So for those who've been following and watching this thing for years, what would you be looking for right here? Well, you would be looking for that. And the question is, are we getting it? And as of right now, it appears so. It appears we're getting exactly what you would be looking for that moment to occur right when you're supposed to, which would again give confluence to that argument of rotational top over there in the equity market. There's probably not as much time as people think, probably until somewhere around March. And you can view that from, hey, look, like the next several weeks look like they have the setup to be pretty exciting, or, the end is near, whatever you want, right? But I think the point of what I'm trying to show is that, as we kick off the new week and there's a lot of volatility there in the stock markets, people be like, oh no, the end is here. But technically speaking, for all the things that we've been looking at, you actually would be expecting this price action to be happening for Bitcoin if it was in a distribution top. And this is exactly what you would look for right before the dominance would break itself down. It's exactly what happened in 2021. And where we're at right now is right on cue. It's right on par. So it's like, if we were to sit here and say, oh, it's going to do this just because of the sake that it's going to do this, well, it's like, well, what was the context of what was happening when this occurred? Well, Bitcoin was in distribution and it was at a specific phase, which was right here. And then that actually happened. So you say, okay, well, are we in that right now? And it's like, oh, wow, it actually kind of looks pretty similar, like we actually are there right now. So again, not saying we won't see something like this come throughout the week, but I think by the time we get to the end of the week and we head into the weekend to try to see it shoot its way back up, again, it's Fed week, there's volatility, it's crazy, there's all kinds of stuff that happens in here with the market readjusting itself during Fed week, and especially since we're finally pausing the cutting cycle. But, kind of like today is something like that right in there, and there's still a little bit more, and then it works its way up. So hopefully that put this into context a little bit of what was going on in the market at the time when all of this occurred. Bitcoin was in distribution, and it was at a very specific phase in its distribution when this breakdown happened. And sure enough, that move that just happened right in there, if that's an ABC happening in there, it's exactly what was occurring. So, all right, moving on over to things like XRP. We've got several lines drawn here on the screen. Of course, we've compared this to double tap bull flags that are happening in here. Still, this could just be a bull flag that's emerging in here. Current levels that it's currently holding right now. This is the highest daily candle close from 2018. So as you can see, this is what we broke out of here recently, which is marked by this level right here. This level is the highest price that we saw over here in December of 2024, and this is the previous all-time high. So you could see struggling here at the all-time high, still holding above the highest daily close in history right now. Even if we close ourselves right in here, we're still above the highest close ever from 2018 and from here in December of 2024. So nothing crazy has been happening in here just yet. We've shown what the parabolic rises of XRP can look like as they go towards their end. I doubt it that we're in this just yet, that we're having the crazy whipsaw happen back yet, but nothing happening in here that you just wouldn't see in a parabolic rise. And still, major milestone levels are still continuing to hold, at least as we kick off Monday. I do understand it's pretty far away, but really, the only time where things become super concerning is just if you take out the low that happens back down in here at $1.90. Otherwise, events like this happening in here are all normal. And really, it still just seems like we're working on that second bull flag. One of the things I've always said about XRP is it does not move independently. It moves with the rest of the market. So when I look at things like this, I have to say to myself, okay, we just hit the all-time high. Are we in a position where we need to be pretty worried about that since we've hit the all-time high, and can it reject off of there and that's the end of the cycle, right? I think it's a reasonable question everybody should ask themselves. And I have to say, well, it's only really going to move up if we actually have those conditions set up there for the rest of the market to be able to do something like that. And that is why we talk about these types of things. That is why we look at Bitcoin. That is why we look at the phases of when things can happen, because if this dominance is falling right in here, these are the times where XRP can perform well. So it's one thing for us to just look at the chart and say, oh, the chart does the structure that looks familiar and similar. It's got to be, is the broader context there for it at the same time? It's why we look at these. It's why we look at this. All of those contexts still seem just fine right in there. So for continued growth, price looks absolutely normal. We still have fine closes happening in here. We'll see how this closes throughout the rest of the day, but you could totally see this is the highest close in history leading up till 2025. We're still sitting right on top of it here as we're kicking off the new week. And the best thing I can tell anybody is to sit there and not get sucked into the narratives, get sucked into the hype, but say to yourself, is there something in the market that looks like there could be a broad-based rally happening throughout here? And that's what we have, and those are the conditions that XRP needs. There's no flip of the switch. There's no nothing, right? I mean, maybe the case gets dropped and we get like a nice rally, especially since, if we're moving into this type of thing, of course, people will credit that. But we are appearing to be moving into the market dynamics of euphoria, right? And so those events and those news narratives could likely come out during the period of euphoria. And, that's what we always kind of anticipated would happen. Like I always said it, like when we're at like 40 and 50 cents of being like, what would you do if we get up near, price levels and extensions? And then that's when everything changes, right? we came up with some silly stuff like, what if Trump says he loves XRP, right? I mean, like that's like it's like possible, right? I don't know, but like then the appeal getting dropped or stuff like that, and everything. Gosh, and then if it does become something like where it gets added to a reserve or something like that, you have every reason in your mind to believe not to do anything about it. But we're reaching the market conditions of euphoria where it's perfect for those news narratives to come out in here and for people to think this time is different, right? But when I look at these things, of course, I have to draw in the broader picture of it. I can't just structurally look at these things and say, the structure's there. I have to look at the bigger picture context, and that is why I show that to you. If this context wasn't here, we could sit here and be pretty worried about XRP hitting that all-time high. But the fact that we have this market condition and this market dynamic showing up here throughout the market, I don't see any reason not to be excited. So I think we're totally fine right now. If things change, we talk about that, but that's why we talk about this stuff. So as we get closer to market opening, XRP is back to $2.88. Bitcoin's back above $100,000. As of right now, of trying to make sense of the range that we're seeing over here on Bitcoin, this is the most sense I can make out of the range currently right now, and it has confluence to other elements that we've been talking about a lot lately. Last week when we were talking about this, it was saying, I don't know if we'll see anything next week, which would be this week, but on seeing something happen once February starts to kick off, well, that's exactly the dynamic that we'd be looking for here. So if we get a strong reaction out of Bitcoin, then kind of watching to see, do we end up getting that big breakdown in the dominance to happen as distribution still continues for Bitcoin over here. So there you go. Make a little bit of sense out of the range there for Bitcoin. It happens to have exact confluence with the things that we've been talking about over here. And that confluence matches up for what you'd be looking for XRP and really the rest of the altcoin market. So we'll get through Fed week. We'll get to see how the stock market reacts and digest the information that it's got this morning in regards to big tech. Is big tech overpriced? Is it threatened? My thoughts have always been it's going to be a rotational top out of tech. And if so, that would buy us a month or two or a month and a half still left in this market right now. So we'll let the market kind of digest all of this happening here this morning. Seems right on pace for the things that we've been talking about over here, for the phase you would think you would be at over here with Bitcoin's distribution. We'll see how things progress throughout the week. And of course, I'll be here with you throughout all of it. And then Wednesday, we'll have markets in the morning and we'll live stream the Fed meeting. Stocks are slightly improved as we get closer to opening. Still opening's about an hour and a half from right now. I'm up very early in the morning. I know that I will get the "you're always sick" comments that last week I was mentioning. Man, I was feeling something coming on, and sure enough, last night it was nothing but the fever sweats, 102 fever, and woke up and it felt like I kind of broke it this morning. I was back down to 99, but my clothes were soaked. So hopefully we've bypassed the worst of it all. But I'll be here all throughout the week. Of course, you guys can check out blockchainbacker.substack.com. Over here, this is my newsletter. It includes a 35-minute audio voiceover recording that I record myself, talking all about these market dynamics for 2025, key developer and user activity levels, coins that have been leaders, laggards, and mid-pack, and then talking about the AI agent phenomenon. If you sign up for the newsletter, of course, you get access to all the past ones, and of course, all of them come with audio recordings that I do. You can check out bcbacker.com for over 40 videos and 11 hours of content teaching you how to set up your own charts and indicators within TradingView and CoinTrader Pro. There's links in the descriptions of all of my videos to bcbacker.com and to the newsletter at blockchainbacker.substack.com. Otherwise, have a wonderful day. What a start to the week. I think we're going to have crazy all week long, but we'll be here for all of it. So, all right, that's it. Thank you so much for watching. If you could, please like this video and give it a thumbs up. If you're new to the channel, please subscribe and hit the notification bell so you can be notified of when I create new content and when I go live. As always, this is not investment advice and I am not a financial advisor, but if you ever need a pick-me-up or a little bit of reassurance, just remember that the blockchain backers got your back. Have a good one.